Welcome to the Future of Ground Transportation podcast, where we discuss the exciting innovations that lie ahead for organizational ground transportation. Each episode, we cover topics tailored to those resolving transportation-related challenges and provide tips, tools, and trends that will inspire you to stay ahead of the curve. And now, here's your host, Daniel Perez.
Hello, Mr. Jose. Thank you very much for joining the Future of Ground Transportation podcast. How you doing tonight?
I'm good. Thank you for having me. Appreciate it. It's great.
Thank you. It is a pleasure and honor to have you on our podcast tonight, especially at this time. So thank you very much for taking the time.
No problem. No problem.
So tell us a little bit about yourself. Tell us a little bit about your background. I know you're a veteran in the transportation sector, and you kind of like me, you sort of grew up in the industry. So for all the audience, if you could just elaborate more about your background and experience.
Yeah, sure. So, I'm Jose Vila. I manage the ground transportation program within Morgan Stanley. That's under the travel sector. So I manage the relationships with all of our black car vendors, our shuttle providers. I also manage the global car rental program as well. I have been doing this for 16 years now as an employee of the firm.
16 years. Cool. So yeah. For all the listeners, tell us how you guys started in the sector. So you started 16 years. So when you first got started.
Yeah. So it's a funny story. So I've been an employee of the firm for 16 years, but 5 years prior, I still work for Morgan Stanley on the consultant side, right? So that's 21 years with, Morgan Stanley as a whole. But even before that, the way I got started was my dad used to work for one of these small mom and pop shops, these black car companies. He used to be an outside dispatcher, right? So, he used to call the cars with the radio, make sure that they arrive on time and make sure the passenger gets connected to the car. This is back in the 1998. So he used to call me in the summer times. This is right after high school, or while I was in high school, actually, to cover for him when he went to lunch, right? Or he'll take an extended lunch. He said, Jose, just here's the radio. It's very easy to come down, whatever. So, obviously he wasn't supposed to do that, but this is back in the day. So, it was easier to get away with stuff. And he used to give me cash for it, right? So he used to, hit me with some $50 here and there. So that's kind of how I first got started in the industry. And you build a relationship with the chauffeurs and stuff like that. So it was pretty cool to seeing that. So I came from that side, right? And then after high school, I was...
So you were in high school dispatching during your high school year?
Absolutely. Wow. Yeah.
Cool.
And then
you definitely started way earlier than I do.
Oh yeah.
So I started when I was 17.
Okay.
For all the listeners, I started really similar to Jose. Pretty much, my dad has been in the ground transportation sector for most of his life. My grandfathers used to be in the transportation business back in Colombia, and then I told myself that I was never gonna operate a ground transportation company, and that's exactly when it happened.
You told.
So is your dad still in the transportation sector?
No. So he's on his way to retirement, but he became a doorman. So he got the job he always wanted actually. But yeah, he was in the ground transportation industry for like 20 years. But it became a little bit too cumbersome for him. And then as you get older, you can't kind of keep up with the ins and outs sometimes. But so I mean, I went back to the story. So I went to art school, right? So I went to the High School of Graphic Design in Manhattan. Funny enough, it's down the road from Morgan Stanley, in Midtown. So when I graduated, I went to art school, and for college. So I had to pay for that, right? So, my parents didn't come from money, so I didn't have, we didn't have the cushy lifestyle. So I had to pay for it. So my dad sent me to this guy. An interesting story. This guy, his name is Howard Yasmin. And the listeners who are in the ground transportation industry probably know that name. He's passed on, but he kind of introduced the dispatch side of things that weren't connected to a company, right? So he had the first company. He had a lot of different vendor relationships with different companies throughout the Midtown area, Morgan Stanley, Citibank, Deutsche Bank. So he would supply the dispatchers for those, and they were independent of car companies, right? So they used to have something called a lineup of cars, right? So employees would come after work, and you have a line of cars waiting for them, in front of that building, right? So you would have that as
Dispatched by paper, pretty much.
correct. Right. So you would have a somebody inside, the lobby area, print out a voucher for someone, and then they take that voucher outside, and
And what year is this? I'm assuming this is when we were all printing money and the economy was.
absolutely, yeah. So this was the year 2000, this 2000. So long story short, he was the first kind of independent operator to have these operators out there that weren't associated with the car companies, because the car companies wanted, they showed favor to their own chauffeurs and stuff like that. So I was hired as the first outside kind of dispatcher for Morgan Stanley, independent of a car company. And from there in 2001, yeah.
Let me ask you, if I may.
Oh, please.
How did you guys how did you get hired? Like, how did you went the ropes?
So
what made you stood out from all the dispatches that wanted that same?
Yeah. How did I get hired for Morgan Stanley? Oh, absolutely. So from there, I worked every aspect, of that kind of program, right? So you had the outside dispatcher, then you went to the inside dispatcher, then you had party coordinators, right? Then so I kind of did everything, right? I said yes to everything. I wanted to know, right? How this thing worked, right? And I worked hand in hand with the leaders within Morgan Stanley, and I made relationships with the passengers as well. And just the work ethic, right? I never said no. And then once things shifted, right? So we opened up an office in Westchester, right? In 2004, I was there for that. So I went there for a couple of years, and I went there in the night shift, and then I worked in Brooklyn. So I worked in every single aspect that we had there. As luck would have it, in 2006, I was still there in a supervisory role, and push came to shove. They didn't want to, contract with that vendor anymore, but they wanted somebody, to be hired, for the firm. And there you go.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So let's fast forward from now to where you are today. Give us a quick overall of what you do on a daily basis and sort of your main challenge that you experience and with in the ground transportation sector.
Yeah, sure. So, like I said, I'm in charge of all the vendor relations. So we have relationships with, over 15 vendors across the United States, and in Americas, right? South America, Canada, and I'm in charge of, just making sure that, everything's on the up and up every day, right? I put out fires every day. As a CEO, you know exactly how that is. But, it's just, keeping our employee base, satisfied and happy with our services. So, that could come in every day is a new day.
Totally. So is it from the experience that riders used to experience in the years of 2000, right? When they used to come out of the building and have all this bunch of black cars lined up, and now it's all through apps and through online bookings, right? So what is the expectations from the end user nowadays compared to in the years 2000?
Yeah. So they've changed. They've changed dramatically, right? So back then, I think the emphasis was on kind of the user experience in terms of chauffeur appearance. Is my vehicle clean? Is my vehicle dented? Is my vehicle, shiny, brand new, white glove service, right? Fast forward to today, with the emergence of all these apps like Uber and on-demand services, I think, the end user wants just the service, right? They want the car there. They want the ride as quickly as possible. And they're willing to take a hit on those previous things I just mentioned, right? So it's just getting, around that and trying to find an equal balance. Because obviously, we still want to provide the best service we can and still want to hold, our vendors to those standards, right? But again, you see the emergence of these apps that are taking it to another level.
Totally, Jose. So, if I may ask, what is your perspective with Uber and Lyft? Obviously, they're very predominant in the ground transportation sector, and I'm just curious to see how corporate America, from your perspective, is managing sort of this shared ride companies, and what's the overall experience for the end users?
I think they've replaced the yellow taxis, right? So specifically in the New York area, metropolitan area, they serve their purpose. On-demand car, I can get it within minutes or within seconds. Sometimes, right? It's replaced the e-hailing, right? I don't compare it to our black car program, or our luxury service program, right? I think for that, on that end, that's what it serves. It serves that purpose, and it serves it well. I can't, I'm from the industry. I understand, we hear, the knocks on it, but, you have to change with the times. And I think that it is what it is, at this point. But yeah, they serve their purpose.
And you said it very well. I mean, how many taxis do you see nowadays in the city, in the streets of New York? It's barely any. I know that normally when I travel, you barely see any taxis unless you go to a really small country where they just don't allow the Ubers and the Lyfts. But at the end of the day, there's always a sector for each different rider. So, for example, in our company, we really tailor to the executives that are looking for that white glove experience. For that, it's more of the experience. It's not just getting from point A to point B, and the confidentiality. So it's totally a different sort of a customer profile. Say. So back into how about on a global scale, right? What sort of infrastructure and technology are you guys is sort of revolving within your sector that you guys are seeing? So I know you were very involved into launching a software program that will help you sort of manage and control the overall expenditure on a worldwide scale.
Yeah, absolutely. So about 3 years ago, about 4 years ago, I may be wrong here, but a couple of years ago, we had an idea that because that we wanted to kind of introduce some sort of booking software within the firm, right? We haven't had it in the U.S. ever, right? We would just pick up the phone, call your vendor, and make a reservation. We were kind of the last kind of big company to kind of do this in the U.S., but I think we took our time purposely because the softwares that were out there, the technology that was out there, I guess it just wasn't for us, right? So what we did was we kind of said, hey, let's partner with the vendor who can kind of make this with us, right? So they would provide the infrastructure and kind of the skeleton of the whole product, but we would just give them all the the information that we need, and just design it from there. So that's what we did. It took us a few years, but we launched it, and unfortunately the pandemic hit. But the tool we have now, what it allows us to not only have the end user book seamlessly, right, via mobile app and desktop, but it allows users such as myself and my management team to view, live reservations, and have, data at our fingertips. And and that's been a game changer for us. And we're still evolving, right? So it's something that is very exciting, just to have it. It's great.
Thank you, Jose. So what we said that is the difference between the booking software that you guys have in place versus the Uber and Lyft experience. Can the end user track the vehicle?
So they can, right? So I think it's pretty much kind of the same kind of deal, right? You know, you put in your information, car gets dispatched, and you know, you can track the car all the way up to the pickup time. You know, the thing that the kind of the things that we have to kind of work on, all right, you know, is like it only works, you know, seamlessly if everybody's playing ball at the same level, right? So you know, the vendors that we have on board, they're great partners, and we're looking for other partners as well. It's kind of hard, you know. That's not easy to do this, because you have to get a vendor to kind of comply with something that they haven't really complied with before. So
Totally, Jose, and that's why I would like to take the time to give you at Morgan Stanley credit, because not a lot of corporations are moving sort of the robust technology around booking softwares for the travel departments, right? Cool. So if we were to fast forward, obviously the name of the podcast is The Future of Transportation. Where, if you were to take a guess, where do you think we will be in 10 years from now, you know, as far as black car services, you know, chauffeur services and the buses? Obviously, we don't have a crystal ball, but with the experience that you have now and being 21 years in the industry now, you know, what are you seeing?
So I tend to not get too excited about you know, like what we see now from a future perspective, right? I like to live in the now. But you know, realistically, you know, like for instance, I've heard that, you know, well, these on-demand services are going to take over, so we can just close down shop, right? And I don't think that's the case, right? I do think that more companies are going to be willing to kind of, you know, I think that's the way it's got to be. I think more companies are going to have to willing to be working together in order for them to survive, right? So what I see in the future is, you know, more on-demand services, right? How do we, you know, how do we get the black car side of things to be 100% seamless, right? 100% on demand. I think Uber and Lyft and the other on-demand vendors have that kind of niche, right? So, you know, I think we can use that and say, look, you know, although it's a black car service, you know, I think we can do it. You know, we can track our car, we can do it on demand, and I think that's kind of where we're going to go with buses, with stuff like that. Just the on demand side, the more clearer sense of what you're getting, right?
Got it. So what I'm hearing from you, Jose, is sort of a master platform that will manage all these different operators in order to provide the end user that on-demand experience.
Yeah, I think that's the way it's looking. That's the way I think about it, right? I think that's, you know, that's the future. But again, 20 years from now, 30 years from now, you know, who knows? I mean, with all the technologies coming out with all, you know, with the self-driving vehicles and you know, the other things, it's just, who knows?
You brought great points. In the next upcoming episodes, we're gonna be interviewing thought leaders in the self-driving vehicles and autonomous vehicles as well.
Yeah.
So, what is your perspective with autonomous vehicles, flying cars? I personally think that we're not too far away from autonomous vehicles.
Mm-hmm.
What is your perspective?
I agree with you. I think for certain segments, I think it'll be easier to introduce them, you know, quickly, right? Delivery services, you know, stuff like that. I don't think we're there yet with the passenger kind of driven Again, I guess it depends on the segment, right? I think, a self-driving vehicle is good to have if you're if you're taking the shuttle from the airport to the car rental station, right? I think that's more realistic in kind of the future, right? A set route, you know what I mean?
Yeah, like I really wonder if financial institutions and Fortune 1000 organizations will trust to put their
Right.
workforce on self-driving vehicles, on flying cars, and at up to one point, we all just get rid of our cars and really becomes the new norm, right?
Yeah. You have to look at liability too, right? So I think that's Morgan Stanley is huge on, looking at, the insurance coverage and liability standards and stuff like that on it. So, I think we kind of, I toyed around, I was joking around saying, well, maybe we can launch Uber. I think Uber had the Uber helicopters and stuff like that into the firm. And, it's our insurance people in the firm, and they're awesome. Like, no way. There's absolutely no way we can write that. There's no policy that can be written to assure, for us to accept. So that's another thing too, right? The insurance and the
Yeah, but if you really look at it, Jose, at the beginning, most Fortune 1000 companies, they were super protective and super scared about using sort of the share apps, right? And how it became the new norm.
Yeah.
Right? So I'm wondering when the flying vehicles and autonomous vehicles come around, how will that play out? And switching subjects in regards to electrical vehicles, are you have any initiatives going on right now? Or is that in the near future programs that you guys are developing, or what do you see the electrical?
Yeah, it's always so our firm is always looking at that, right? From a ground transportation aspect, look, if something comes across our table, we'll look at it, right? And we'll present it to senior leadership. But we, obviously the point of that just being an environmentally friendly initiative, would get it to the top of the food chain quickly, right? So, it just depends. I mean, it's obviously cost is always a factor, but it's something that the firm is always looking at.
Yeah, you brought a great point. Is the cost factor is huge comparing to the traditional fuel vehicles that we normally use, and it's funny because as we presented to Fortune 1000 companies, the price is double, right? And at that point, it really depends on the organization if they're really looking to make the investment or not.
Exactly.
So tell us about which project are you currently most excited about your firm, if you might be able to share with us.
Yeah, I have so many projects coming through coming down the pipe, but on the technology side, we also have a shuttle application that's kind of in the same suite as our black car booking tool. So we just got approval to kind of relook at the tool and make some big adjustments to them. So to it. And again, I believe our suite of softwares are just second to none. And once we launched that shuttle, the new version of the shuttle, the application is going to be it's going to be great. Our users.
Got it. Thank you very much, Jose. And what would you suggest for all the listeners or for folks that are entering into the transportation space and the experience that you have now? What would you tell those folks that are just getting started on the sector?
On the corporate side?
Yes.
Okay. Yes.
Corporate or even privately?
No. So from a corporate perspective, I mean, I think in order to run a successful program, it's all about the relationships you build, right? With your vendors. It's I can't stress it enough. Just being super just on the ball with them and just developing developing that relationship, because, and I always say this, anybody can get you a car, right? Anyone can, it's easier to get you a vehicle, but it's what the vendor does behind it, right? That
the relationship.
Absolutely.
Say for me, every time that I go into a sales meeting, I always present myself as an extension of their team.
Mm-hmm.
It's a mutual relationship, and for me, I'm not looking to be anybody's vendor. I'm looking to be their partner.
Correct.
Right? Because as you've been on this industry for a long time, things happen in the industry, right? Or things happen whether someone shows up late, you get breakdowns. There's so many different components that could happen. But at the end of the day, it is how companies address the situation, what measurements they put in place so that way it doesn't happen again, but that they really react in. I'm a huge believer that leaders anticipate and losers react. And in this business, it's all about being proactive. And things are going to happen, but it's like, okay, how do we make sure that we're 5 steps ahead so that way that doesn't happen again?
Right.
And then it happens again, and then you got to catch up again.
But yeah, and it's the continuation of, like I said, like you just develop that relationship. You check in with your vendor, even if again, even if you haven't heard from them, even if things are going well. I think it's those little things where you keep an open mind and and just be real. It helps, right? Because you ask for advice, you give advice. It's just your partners in this whole thing. So
Totally.
I think it's done us well, right? I've gone through hurricanes, strikes and all that stuff, and I'm sure you have too. But I'm happy to say I get first dibs on a lot of vehicles, right? It's based on relationships,
Totally.
So it's like, and I'm proud of that. I think that that's the biggest thing. And a lot of people in my position. And this is just, it is what it is. It's nothing against anyone. It's just, they're not from the industry, right? So you have, people who are in my position that are from another sector in travel, like, airlines or hotels, but they have, ground on their plate, security, sourcing, so, right. So, I think that they're used to having different relationship with their vendors, and then it's something that they kind of, use for these relationships. So it's a little different, but that's what I would say.
Got it.
Absolutely.
Thank you. So with that being said, Jose, what are the most common challenges that you currently experience, whether it's in the in the black car side or on the bus side? Or technology, right? There's so many different components.
Yeah. It's especially now, post-COVID, I do think that the biggest challenge that we have are our end users, not being used to kind of the changes that are going on, right? So in the cities specifically, and again, you know exactly as much as anyone, these vendors have been decimated, right? A lot of chauffeurs are not coming back to work, so we're dealing with those issues, right? We're dealing with, driver shortages, my car wasn't there on time, what's going on here, we're dealing with, and we haven't been used to that for years, right? So, we can only say, the drivers and the companies have been, dealing with issues so much. So we're trying to, combat that, and again, too, I think, another issue that we were trying to combat is, look, we have to start realizing that, our current rates have to be restructured, right? And this is industry-wide. This is not just us. Yeah. So,
Especially
inflation's up.
The inflation, yes.
Yeah, exactly. So, cost of insurance is up. We understand that. Well, at least I do. So, and my job is to make my firm understand it, right? So, it's just having that realization that, it's going to cost a little more, to get a car to the airport than it did pre-COVID. So it's just those challenges, every day.
Got it. Thank you, Jose.
Yeah.
And last, what will you recommend for minority-owned transportation businesses to penetrate into this market? Right, it's a tough market, as you mentioned. There's a major chauffeurs shortage. Inflation is massive right now. But overall, what would you suggest to either small to mid-sized companies, especially minority-owned companies, to sort of penetrate into the market, and especially with Fortune 1000 corporations?
Get involved in all the programs that are offered. I mean, that's kind of the biggest thing. Look, you know more than I do, right? I think you take advantage of every program that's offered in that. If you're a minority or a woman, and that own a business, you should get your certification ASAP. There's because
Yes.
The access that you have, just doing that is second to none. That's how we got our, that's how we linked up. So I think just that, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, but very well said. I'm a huge proponent of, at the beginning, when I got certified, I used to create an identity for myself in the business that this was a disadvantage, and now it's a major advantage as a minority-owned business to be certified. So if you're not certified, totally get certified. And for the folks on from the corporations, actually creating more programs and events to connect with minority-owned businesses, because there's so many talented minority-owned businesses overall to partner with.
Yep.
Cool. So just to be respectful of your time, Jose, thank you very much again for joining us today. Any other additional comments that you'd like to suggest to all of our listeners in
No, I mean,
the sector?
No, this was awesome. This was great. Congratulations on this. I hope this does very well. But no other comments from me.
Perfect.
I hope to be a guest again. This is great.
Thank you, Jose. Really appreciate it. If you like the show, please subscribe. All right. You guys have a great day. Thank you.
Thanks for tuning in to the future of ground transportation. We appreciate you coming along for the ride. If you found value in this episode and want to hear more, please make sure to subscribe to the show.